Welcome to the Ricky Mathews Show. It's great to see you. Thanks for tuning in or joining us on YouTube or Facebook or your favorite podcast. This is where we celebrate Mississippi, for that matter, and all the amazing people who are working so hard to make this a better place to live, work, and play. Hey, listen, not a bunch of speeches to get today, or any quotes for that matter. I'm going to be joined by my friend Hunter Dawkins. He's the publisher from the Gazebo Gazette, and he's also a SuperTalk opinion contributor. And we're thrilled to have a partnership with Hunter, and he joins me here periodically on my show. There's a lot of topics to talk about, but before we go any further, I just want to welcome my friend Hunter to the Ricky Mathews Show.
Good morning, Ricky. It's always good to see you, and I appreciate you and Kyle having me on. So.
Good to see you too, man. Wow, you just got back in town from Texas like the wee hours of the morning, and you're still joining me. So thank you, buddy.
Appreciate you.
So look, man, there's a lot to talk about. We're in an election season right now. This is not a political show, so I don't get into how I feel about various candidates or whatever. But, the Harrison County Sheriff's race seems to have two really good candidates that are vying for that position. I've talked to incredibly good people on both sides of that race, and they both appear to have run good races. I mean, we got a good selection there, don't we, buddy?
Ricky, I'll be honest with you. I've never liked two candidates as much as I like these two guys. They are both qualified. Either way, across the board, they're going to give positive impacts to the sheriff position. Now, there is, and I'm not here to endorse anybody one way or the other like yourself, but there is a difference between what you're looking for both candidates. Both candidates are very good people. Mr. Matt Haley, Mr. Lewis Elias, they're both great, but they're very distinctively different. And it depends on what you're looking for, because people ask me all the time, hey, who should we go for? Well, what are you wanting? What are you looking for? Because this candidate fits your criteria better this way or that way, depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Do you endorse candidates at your newspaper?
Ricky, I've seen several other newspapers in the past do that, including your own former newspaper that you worked with. And not only is it just not necessarily a good idea for me, because there are a lot of people with different influential passions for this side or that side, and I hate to be the kind of guy that it's like bucking up for, well, the advertisers say this or advertisers say that. You know me, and I'm not really that type of guy, but I also want to give both a fair shot if it's this close. I think it's going to be this close. It'd be a difference if it was, a support of where the state of Mississippi or the district down here on the coast had a big support for one person over the other. And the other person was just kind of a running all the time, lackluster opponent. But I really think these two guys have got a lot of good shots in both ways. And I'm really supportive of both of their efforts.
Yeah, as you pointed out, look, the commitment to do endorsements, especially in a place like coastal Mississippi. And I could really say the same thing about when I spent time in Mobile for coastal Alabama, and then, of course, the southeast region of Louisiana as publisher of the Times-Picayune. The number of political subdivisions that we had to say grace over, Lord have mercy. So when you decide that you want to do endorsements and you have a number of candidates that are engaged in that, it is a gigantic time commitment. I mean, to do it fairly, you got to meet with the candidates. You got to bring them into your editorial board meeting. All the members of the editorial board have to be present, and I have to lead the meetings, because at the end of the day, if we decide we're gonna endorse one over the other, I want to know that I was there for every conversation, and I want to know that when we decide we're going to take a position, that it's the best possible decision that we can make. So it's a huge commitment. It's hard when you own your own newspaper to decide, and you're sort of the jack of all trades, as I've described you before. You can't. There's no physical way you'd be able to say grace over all of the elected positions.
Well, Ricky, I'll be honest with you, and I've had a great opportunity to host the Long Beach political debate with both candidates. I've
Yes.
gotten that's almost like being an editorial board,
Yeah.
asking the questions that I came up with myself and the high school student Jacoby Johnson that we came up with together. But that even getting their information, I can't openly endorse one candidate because their opinion might be relative towards a group of people in my area that covers that they're looking for this from a sheriff candidate, but that's not necessarily something of, it's more of a conglomeration. Who is the entire community going to get behind? Well, I don't know if the entire community is about this for this candidate. I mean, I kind of do know a lot about certain areas the community is going for, but I don't want to put my support behind this one candidate just because myself and maybe some of my followers, are
Yeah.
like, okay, we have to push for this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Hunter, what I'm speaking to though is this notion of endorsing in every race. So if you got
absolutely.
a bunch of statewide, and you've got state legislative, and you've got mayors and supervisors, and let's just say you happen to have a lot, a presidential race even. So let's say you have a lot of potential, a lot of folks to vote for on the ballot. It's a huge commitment to say, I'm going to go in and do my homework on every single one of them and then make a pick, make a pick and endorse it. Woo. It's a big commitment. And I've been there, done that. And it's biting off a bunch.
You definitely need a larger publication than just mine just to be able to do that from a wide or national level. So
yeah, it's a lot to say grace over, that's for sure. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the sheriff's race is going to bring some people out. The lieutenant governor's race may bring some people out. It would typically be one where there might be a lot of yawning at election time, just for whatever reason, and so turnout to vote is going to be a big difference maker in this race, I believe.
In Harrison County, you're absolutely right. There hasn't been this contested of a race in Harrison County, at least for the last around 8 years since when current Sheriff Peterson unseated the predecessor of him, Melvin Bresalara, as the sheriff. But that was, even though that wasn't necessarily as big of a turnout as I think either one of them hoped for, this may eventually be a bigger turnout for both of those. But, like I said, or I've told you in the past, a 20% voter turnout is the average turnout in Harrison County. So anything better than that would be obviously good support from both candidates.
It's sad, though, when you look at how few people vote and how much control over the outcome a few people can have. And I guess the people who don't vote can't complain about it because the outcome is the outcome, and you had a chance to weigh in and cast your ballot and you didn't. And I would really encourage people to participate.
So many people question about why there's so much more in northern Mississippi of the influence of votes. They have a greater turnout than us. And that's, even though we produce more of the revenue, they have the better turnout than us. They get to make more of those decisions at the end of the day.
So. Yeah. Another race in Harrison County that will be interesting to watch is Connie Rocco is not running for re-election, so her seat on the Harrison County Board of Supervisors is open, and good contested race happening there. So, real opportunity here. Bring some new blood into the Harrison County Board of Supervisors. That's never a bad thing, and the opportunity to advance the ball, and that will be fun to watch too.
And not only that, District 4 supervisors race from the other end of the spectrum. There's been some questions raised by, the Sun Herald has come out, really trying to ask some questions more than anything, not so much attacking, but asking a question. Anita Lee wrote an article about the current supervisor, but that apparently that's been settled with the state auditor, even though I'm not necessarily sure the state auditor is happy about the reaction. So, But
yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Our state auditor, incidentally, is in it to win it. He's
yeah,
all in on protecting the public fund, and it's been fun to watch Shad White in action. We'll have him on actually soon to talk more about what he's up to these days. He recently testified in Congress, and just a lot going on there. Hey, we are having the opportunity to visit with my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette. He's also a SuperTalk contributor, thought leader is what we like to call them, and we'll continue the conversation when we get on the other side. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. I have my friend Hunter Dawkins, who's the publisher of the Gazebo Gazette and a contributor to SuperTalk Mississippi News, and someone I have a lot of admiration for. Because to be a small newspaper publisher these days, you got to be a jack of all trades. And how Hunter does what he does, I don't know how he does it, because he covers high school and college. He even covers the Saints and the Pelicans, and he's all over the place. And he writes important columns for SuperTalk. I don't know how you do it, Hunter.
well, my friend, I'll tell you this: if I learned how to, if I learned back in the day how to be in with that Mathews fishing dynasty, setting the state records and all that, that would be a one-on-one with it. So.
Well, we enjoy our fishing world, that's for sure. I think a family that fishes together stays together. So we've had a lot of success just enjoying being together on the water. That is for sure. Hey, I know that you're working on this, so I don't want to let the cat out of the bag too much, but you and I did talk about this recently, this notion that Mississippi has a huge challenge in healthcare today. And I don't think the leaders of our state are talking about it enough. I just don't think they're talking about it enough. And here's the thing. Over 51% of Mississippians live in rural areas. And if you go back and study the census, what you'll learn is Mississippi is actually very unique in this respect, that a lot of other states, people who live in the rural areas, are working to get out of those rural areas. So a lot of people transitioning out of the rural areas, but Mississippians, they like their rural areas. They like to stay in their rural areas. I spent a lot of time in the Mississippi Delta. I know the challenges they're having at Greenwood Hospital. I watched the challenges we're having with hospitals in rural parts of this state. Even in the most populated parts of our state, there are huge healthcare challenges, but the availability of affordable, available healthcare we're nosediving in this state, in certain parts of the state. We don't have, if you get in trouble in Greenwood, you've got to go to Jackson, or you got to go to Memphis, and maybe you can go to Grenada, maybe. And it's not good, man. And I don't think we're dealing with it. Now, what Mississippi has done with not expanding, and by the way, I'm conservative, I should have pointed out. And I watched what happened when Bobby Jindal was in Louisiana. I watched what happened when Governor Edwards became the governor. The very first move he made was to expand Medicaid, and it has had tremendous economic value for the hospitals in the state of Louisiana. But for some political reason, we don't want to have the conversation. And so we're not having the conversation. And meanwhile, we're saying no to $1 billion a year. And that money could be coming to especially the rural areas of the state, and helping to fund unfunded health care. And we're just not dealing with the issue because it's Obamacare. We're saying no to it year after year after year after year. And meanwhile, the healthcare system in Mississippi continues to collapse. It's not good, Hunter. And I know you've been thinking about it.
Well, and Ricky, my biggest point to you guys and the SuperTalk team in Jackson was that there is this whole idea that maybe it's a painted movement by the conservative base. I'm not sure. I can't speak to that because I try to remain neutral all the way across the board. But there's this entitlement socialism ideal that is coming to the spectrum. And the fact, when you look at the writing at the end of the wall, every congressional report that I've looked at, because I still have access to Congressional Research Service report from my time when I worked in D.C. for about 5 years. But that program, the report, it tells you, it says if Mississippi would accept Medicaid, all these different benefits could happen. Jobs, the hospital not closing, the people providing so many more opportunities from healthcare coverage. That alone right there should equal, sign on the end of the dot. And it just hasn't. And it's not. And I've talked with the governor in several of my interviews with him. Why is this happening this way? You're a numbers guy, Governor Reeves. This is all about the numbers. These are working in your favor. Just because of polarization towards something directed towards this or that, or because it's a Democratic administration that made this happen, even though if you look farther back, way back when President Reagan, during his later years, they had really kind of were attempting to push for this policy approach with Medicaid, and they partially created the Medicaid division for states, even though it was the Medicare system was under FDR and Lyndon Johnson, the creation of it. But during Reagan's administration, they really tried to get on board and push this forward. And it just so happened that President Obama, during his administration, his first few years, the Democrats were in control and they put this policy through. And why, like you said, with Louisiana, with even Alabama, I believe Alabama is kind of looking into this even further because they see so many beneficial opportunities, not this dreadfulness of hospital closures, people not being covered, cutting people off after the pandemic last week. The Division of Medicaid had to cut off was like 29,000 people from Medicaid because of the pandemic. But at the end of the day, the benefits far outweigh the negatives.
That's the political, and meanwhile you have conservative think tanks, you have conservative columnists in this state who are writing that expanding Medicaid won't matter. It won't save the situation. Look, no one says that expanding Medicaid is going to save hospitals or healthcare in Mississippi. There's a dual opportunity for us. We need to re-engineer the healthcare system in Mississippi. We need to decide how do we want to approach this. And as Tiffany Murdoch, the former CEO of Singing River Health System, pointed out, we have to decide, okay, where do we want the full service hospital healthcare system to be located in this state. And then the next tier would be sort of a triage capability, but it's tightly connected and integrated to the overall healthcare system. We need that. We need, to be competitive today, as we've seen in the conversations with the sale of Singing River, to be competitive today on the capital expenditures that have to be made to be on the cutting edge of surgery and all these different diagnostics. It costs tens of millions of dollars. And then you got insurance, you got all this centralized negotiating that's taking place. And I mean, the list just goes on and on. There's so many challenges. So expanding Medicaid's not going to solve the problem, but boy, will it contribute financially in a gigantic way. If we had $1 billion project that we could get, we would call a special session of the legislature and get it done. But because this is somehow connected to Obamacare, we don't want it, even though there have been Republican governors accepting expansion across the United States. We're so far behind the 8 ball on this one. I wish we could have a rational discussion about it.
Ricky, I'll remind you of something that you and I have talked about a bunch, that you have told me a bunch. After Hurricane Katrina, y'all had to make some steps with Haley Barbour came down and set up the committee where y'all had to make some moves. You didn't know how things were going to work out. There was no idea of plans on. There is figures. There are reports that have been said how this is going to work out. Just because we don't exactly know because it hasn't happened. I mean, can you imagine some of the things that would have not happened if y'all hadn't taken actions after Hurricane Katrina?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And I think what the governor should do, with help from the lieutenant governor and the speaker of the House, they should have an all hands hit the deck effort, just like the Governor's Commission, and just like the Governor's Commission on Recovery, Rebuilding, and Renewal after Hurricane Katrina, to put a bipartisan effort together to say the state of healthcare in Mississippi, 51% of Mississippians live in rural areas, and many of them, too many of them, don't have access. And it's just not just about the rural areas, but this is something that affects every hospital and every healthcare provider in the state. The reality, though, is we got to fix it. And let's put a bipartisan effort with great leadership. Let's bring some of the most powerful CEOs into the conversation, and let's start an effort to try to define what is a re-engineered healthcare system in Mississippi. What does it look like, and what role does expansion of Medicaid play within that context? We're just not having the conversation. We're just nibbling around on the edges. Meanwhile, you keep hearing one report after another where surgery's being stopped at this hospital, OBGYN's being stopped. How would you like to be pregnant in certain parts of this state right now?
If you're pregnant across the bridge over here in Hancock County, you have to either go to New Orleans or Memorial to have the baby. I mean, it's, you know,
we gotta have this conversation, and I don't know what the answers are, but what I do know is I've seen, as you pointed out after Hurricane Katrina, we can get our heads around some pretty complicated things in this state, and we need to do it on the healthcare dimension. And we're not talking enough about this. That's just the reality of it. We're not talking enough about it. Hey, when I come back from Hunter, when I'm in my conversation with Hunter Dawkins, we'll talk about Southern Miss and the Saints and high school sports. We'll talk about it all. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show. Listen, we don't get involved in too many issues too often, but this notion of the healthcare system in Mississippi is something we got to get serious about. And see, I think you can be a Republican. I'm conservative. I do think there's a role for government on social issues. I learned that well after Hurricane Katrina. We all did. I'm very conservative when it comes to the free enterprise system and entrepreneurship and regulation and these things that get in the way of helping us thrive economically. So I'm very conservative on those kinds of issues. So I'm a moderate. I'm somewhere in between. And I think you can be a Republican and be for Medicaid expansion because just about every state in the nation has done it. And only the hard-headed states are holding out. And all you need to do is go to a state that's expanded it and study what's happened there, like Louisiana, just next door. And the economic development and opportunities for health care and paying for health care is something that is pretty profound. And we need to have the conversation more seriously. We need to look at this as a hurricane just hit Mississippi, as a health care hurricane, and we're going to respond to it the way we would a disaster. That's what we need to do in Mississippi, and we're not doing it currently. We're just kind of nibbling around the edges. Sorry, because I don't usually get off on a soapbox, but that's one I feel strongly about. Okay, Hunter, it's so much fun to watch the Saints do what they're doing right now. I've enjoyed visiting with Jeff Duncan every week to kind of get a feel for it. But man, they're not playing. They came in to build a winner around Derek Carr, and I'm pleased with the moves I'm seeing.
I'm very pleased where they are going towards in the training camp. Now, I have heard some recent stuff about how they're going to a few of the rookies are sitting out, but that's just a little bit more of the norm than anything else. Just trying to break it down to the 53. How many people that you want for the training camp? But I'm telling you what, though, as hot as it's been the last couple of weeks, it's going to be interesting there in that training camp. I don't even know.
They're going to earn their money. They're going to be inside a lot.
Well,
you know how cold it is inside that room.
I was going to say, last year it rained a bunch and we were inside a few times, but I wouldn't be surprised if that happened again with the heat. So.
Yeah, I remember when I was publisher of the newspaper in New Orleans, I had the opportunity to go over to meet with Tom Benson and Miss Benson and Mickey Loomis and Lashow Dean. And I walked over. They had just built these little patios on their offices on the second floor, overlooking the training facility. Yep. And Mickey Loomis and I walked over there, and we looked out over that area. And I remember that was actually at the beginning of the summer. It was hot then. And my thought in my mind was, my goodness, man, I can't imagine being all with full pads and going at it. How hot it would be.
And I know Miss Gale doesn't get a lot of credit for this, but Miss Gale's at every single practice. She always makes sure that she's known, she's there. She's usually talking with Mickey or Mr. Lashow or something as such, but she is a very quality owner, and she's putting all of her feet down in the right direction. So.
She's done a really good job, and as Jeff broke the story on the Benson family division that was created just as he was, getting near his death, and thank goodness that she maintained control of the team as a result of all that. That's really good for the city, because had it gone the other direction, I knew the other parties well, it would be a mess, I'm afraid. And what we've been able to keep this wonderful team, a wonderful president and dean, and then of course with Mickey Loomis doing what he does so well. Mickey actually looked over toward me at one point during the meeting. I mentioned this to you before, as they had just bought the Pelicans. And of course, they had the Saints. He said, "Man, we're trying something that's never been tried before." The same ownership group owning two professional sports franchises in the same city, and I like some of what I'm hearing about the Pelicans. I mean, it does look like injuries killed them last year, but their stars are saying the right thing. Hopefully, Zion can come back and actually play for a season. Wouldn't that be something?
Well, and I think after the kind of social media level and the trade rumors kind of quieted down, I think the team is really getting forward and getting ready to start a new preparation. And they had a good summer league last week.
Yeah,
I think 5-2 or something such, but they were competitive in every single game, and that's great when you got the rookies coming out there or the second-year players coming out there and producing as much as they have, and that's why I guess we're trying to build they are trying to build a minor league style team where you come from the roots. You start at the G League and you build up through the ranks. I know the NBA doesn't necessarily appear that way most of the time, but the Pelicans seem to be doing that. And we've got the kid from Ohio State who was injured all last year, E.J. Liddell. He's going to be coming back, and he was very productive, and all the rest. It was good stuff.
And let's just hope that we can keep Zion healthy. Jeff's big concern about Zion is that he's so big. He's such a big, and he's so aggressive that so far he has not passed the test in terms of his feet and their ability to sort of take the brunt. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, and as I've told you before, Ricky, too, with Zion, what he really needs, in my opinion, is he needs somebody to come in there and tell him. And he had Coach D'Antoni, who was one of the assistants to the team the last couple of years, who was a previous coach for the Phoenix Suns and some other teams. But he needs to have like a Coach K style guy who he coached him in college, and he did with Stan Van Gundy when he was there earlier. But he needs to have a guy that really comes in there and tells him, you need to get on the floor. Just because you're hurting one way or the other, the more production he has on the court and the better he plays, the better things work out. So that's it's going to be coming back to the Saints. It's going to be so interesting to watch. Derek Carr has some real talent he's going to be throwing to, and if we can keep our stars healthy, my goodness, man, he's got some weapons. Well, as you know, Ricky, I'm an offensive line guy, and for me, it always starts with the trench. And I not only when I coached in high school, it was always, those guys dictate how much he's going to get open, how much, things are going to work. I guess we're all waiting for Kamara to hear what's going to happen with the suspension, how many games and all. I've been thinking about it for a while. I might even write a piece pretty soon. Probably going to be around 6 games was the precedent that was set, but I'm not sure. It's hard to tell with with Roger, what he's going to take, because he's not necessarily favorable of the New Orleans Saints in the past.
He's not, but here's the thing. Okay, so we've talked about on the show that there was a video from the taxi cab that didn't look good for them. Of course, the video at the Las Vegas hotel where the event happened, we don't know the mitigating circumstances. We don't know. You can only see what you see on video. What is in Alvin Kamara's favor is the fact that he has had an exemplary, personnel record. He's been a leader. He's been cerebral, philosophical. He's well-read, smart as hell, great role model. This was so far outside of his normal behavior. It's incredible.
And I think that's why they brought the charge down to a misdemeanor, because they didn't see anything in the past, or no pattern was being set for that. So yeah. I'm hoping that works for the Saints and works for Kamara in general. But we also have Jamal Williams, who led the NFL in touchdowns last year for the Lions. And Jamal's been playing pretty hard, pretty good. Got the TCU kid that we drafted. It's looking good. There's going to be a lot of talent out there.
Yeah, TCU kid's coming off of knee surgery, but they think he'll be ready. And then you've got listen, Taysom Hill, they at least in the early days of the discussion, they're going to be putting him more into a wide receiver role. He had over 500 yards on the ground last year, man. Just incredible.
See, to me, Ricky, that's where it's going to benefit Taysom more than anything else, is because he's going to have all these weapons around him. Therefore, they're not going to be able to double team him. It's going to open up the patterns a lot better for him. And I personally think that's going to be a good thing for the New Orleans Saints.
Well, again, if we can just keep our stars healthy, if they, we can, across the board on our receiving core, we've got a lot to look forward to. And then, of course, the defense is coming back. It's strong. And you've got some incredible superstars emerging at cornerback, and we picked up some great young talent. So,
and the defensive linemen, the ones that we lost, were good, but then we got some back that were even younger and better. So.
Yeah, but as we've discussed before, you and I, and then Jeff and I have talked about this as well on our Friday show. The defensive line had performed well, but last year they didn't perform very well. And
Not on the running game.
And man, the running game is what makes the difference. You got to own it up front. So anyway, when we come back, we'll continue. We're going to talk about Hunter's going to be doing something special as it relates to Gulfport High football this year, and we'll talk more about that. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathews Show, and thank you for listening on 103.1 or at SuperTalk TV or the SuperTalk app or at YouTube or Facebook or your favorite podcast. I use Spotify. That's just my favorite podcast, my favorite platform, because I listen to a lot of music. I have a wide ranging love of music from some rock, but a lot of country, a lot of classical music. I love blues, jazz. I got it all. But also have the Ricky Mathews Show on my Spotify, so I can just pull it up and if I miss a show, I can go back and listen to it that way. So if you're on Spotify, just do a search on the Ricky Mathews Show and use that as a way to sort of cue it up for yourself. And thank you again for listening in this multimedia world that we're in today. Hey, when we went to break with my friend Hunter Dawkins from the Gazebo Gazette, we mentioned that something special is happening this year as it relates to Gulfport High football. I'm excited that you're going to be the color guy this year, and the SuperTalk's going to be doing the weekly presentations of those games.
And I can't say thank you enough to Kim and Steve. It's Kim being the CEO, Steve being the owner. They've had a lot of faith in me, and they've really put together. Them and the sales team really have worked hard with me, and we've got me and myself and Harold Rose, who's a good friend of mine, who's a West Harrison High teacher. We're going to do this. We're going to make this happen, and it's great.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So, Gulfport High football games on SuperTalk. What a cool thing! And you'll get to know Hunter really well, as you see from our conversations. He's sort of got a good analytical mind when it comes to analyzing things. He was a football player. He was an offensive line coach. So he gets this stuff, and he'll be able to see stuff that the average person doesn't see. But you do win in the trenches, don't you, my friend?
That's absolutely right, and it's so many levels, especially in high school football. A lot of the games, it doesn't necessarily matter the talent. It's more about what's around you and what's going to make you being able to win games.
So people said of Southern Miss, they go into the Sun Belt Conference. They'll just be a mediocre participant. But then you go and look at how each of their sports have already been performing. It's incredible how well they've done, isn't it?
It's amazing, Ricky. They've been predicted by Vegas Prediction to win 4 games this year. You look at their schedule, it's almost like, wow, I can guarantee 5 games right off the bat. I can make some money on a Vegas bet. But it's, I'm guessing that it's a lot of things about, offensive production, because they're putting in a new quarterback this year instead of having to rely just on Frank Gore and the Wildcat system and all that. But they really have a solid team, and they've got a lot of guys coming back, from injuries. I'm really interested in seeing Will Hall in the group at the Sun Belt Conference in New Orleans next week. It's going to be great.
Well, look, I've had wonderful conversations with President Joe Paul about this, and I'm a big fan of his. I'm
Dr.
so happy
Paul's
to see
a great guy.
See him in that position. I've known him for many, many, many years. Worked with him in so many different iterations of his career, and before he was named the president of Southern Miss, I was, saying, what do we have to do to ramp up the conversation around you? You're not an interim. You should be the permanent. And the College Board was wise to do what they did. But you had for many, many years, you had on the football side of the operation what you still have on the baseball side of the operation. That is that just a few guys for the history of the program, and then suddenly the football side got away from it. You have a guy for a couple of years, another guy for a couple of years, another guy for a year, and did just too much change, man. And what excites Joe Paul about Will Hall is that he is a guy who appears that he's going to be here for the long haul. Great young, talent, terrific football mind, ability to recruit like nobody's business. And in the day of NIL and the transfer portal and all the other challenges these guys have, we need somebody who's going to be here for the long haul. And I really think he's going to be a winner.
Well, and I'll be honest with you, Ricky, each one of these 3 coaches, the football, baseball, and basketball, are Mississippi guys. Will Hall, his father was a legend, a high school coach, Coach Bobby Hall. Coach Ladner, I've known him for years. Down here on the coast is a Hattiesburg. His dad is in the Hall of Fame. Coach O is what I always call him in Southern Miss baseball. He's got nothing but love, for this team and for this area. It's hard to get 3 coaches that are that much invested in such a small program on the national perspective. I think it's going to be outstanding production. So.
Well, look, again, football is going to do well. Basketball already has done extremely well, and we know the story on baseball. It just keeps getting better. But it's exciting to be a fan. We didn't even talk about SEC days that just happened. And SuperTalk Mississippi, the team there owned that conversation. It was incredible how good that team is. But hey, we're out of time for today. Keep up the good work, my friend. I can't wait to catch up with you again.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I enjoy your show, and thank you guys for doing what you do.
You bet. This has been Hunter Dawkins. And anyway, have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.